Picture this. Millions of screens across America flicker to life. A blinking red light over the camera signals that we are live. But what the viewers don't know, what you don't know yet, is that in the next few minutes, one woman will pull the curtain back on a truth so uncomfortable, so politically radioactive, that another will fight to keep it buried in real time. This isn't just television. Just television. This is the moment when polished smiles fracture and power's grip starts to slip. The set is bright, perfect, staged for civility. Veteran host Mark Hanley sits at the center, speaking in that practice tone networks love, the one that suggests calm, even when the ground is about to break. On one side of the split screen sits Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, live in the Washington studio, posture straight, eyes forward, hands resting lightly on a thin folder. She doesn't move much. She doesn't have to. Her presence alone says she knows something. On the other side, Ivanka Trump, appearing from her Florida home, framed by immaculate white walls, soft lighting, and the carefully chosen cream blouse of someone who understands optics. Her expression is controlled, the faint curve of a diplomatic smile, ready for any question, or so she thinks, say she. The topic on paper? Ethics, transparency, and the intersection of politics with family enterprises, but even in the opening seconds, the air between these two is charged. You can see it in Ivanka's fingers, tapping the armrest just once. You can see it in the way Jasmine's hand rests over that folder, like a chess player already seeing the checkmate. Mark starts broad. He tosses the first question to Jasmine about financial transparency, and without hesitation, she speaks. The American people are tired of wondering who's pulling the strings. They deserve to know decisions are made for their benefit, not for someone's overseas business partner. The shot isn't subtle, and she doesn't look at Ivanka. Not yet. When Ivanka responds, it's smooth, measured. A transparency is important, but it shouldn't be weaponized for political theater. She means to disarm. Instead, she just opens the first crack in her armor, because Jasmine isn't here for theater. She's here for the folder. And when it opens, the debate will become something far more dangerous than either woman expected. Mark's eyes flicker toward the folder like he's trying not to look too interested. But the camera catches it, and so does Ivanka. Her posture changes just enough for the trained eye to notice. Shoulders drawing in, chin tilting upward, the silent body language of someone bracing for impact. Then, almost casually, Mark asks the Congresswoman, "You brought something with you today?" Today, Jasmine's lips curl into the faintest smile. Not the warm kind, but the kind that says I've been waiting for you to ask. "Yes," she replies, her voice calm, but edged. A voice calm but edged, as something that came into my possession just this morning. Something I think the public deserves to see. Ivanka's right hand moves briefly out of frame, adjusting an earpiece, signaling to a staffer. Whatever it is, the movement betrays a flicker of unease. She stays silent, letting Jasmine take the stage. The folder opens with a soft rustle, but it may as well be the sound of a fuse being lit. But Jasmine doesn't glance down at the papers. She already knows what's in them. "These," she says, holding up a neatly clipped stack, "are public records. Contracts, renewals, filings with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. What makes them relevant is their timing, and the connections they reveal." Ivanka finally cuts in. "Mark, I think it's important to make sure we're not spreading misinformation here." Jasmine doesn't blink. She holds up one sheet so the camera and Ivanka can see it. "This," she says evenly, "is a renewed licensing agreement between Ivanka Trump's brand and a foreign government agency, dated just 4 months ago." Right in the middle of high-stakes negotiations between that same government and the United States, the studio goes still. The crew stops shifting in their seats. Even Mark hesitates before speaking, his gaze flicking between the two women. I have no idea what she's talking about. My brand is completely separate from political dealings. Jasmine stays locked in. It's in your name, and it was signed by your company's CEO, who, according to these filings, still reports directly to you as principal owner. In the control room, the producers know they've struck gold. They keep the camera tight on Ivanka's face, where the first hint of real irritation is breaking through the calm. And Jasmine, she hasn't even shown the most damning page yet. Mark leans forward, sensing the audience leaning with him. "Miss Trump," he says carefully, "you've also spoken in favor of transparency before. Do you agree with the Congresswoman's position?" Ivanka exhales slowly, offering a faint, almost rehearsed smile. Transparency is always important, Mark. But it's equally important not to turn it into a tool for political theater. Her voice is polished, but something in her eyes is harder now, like she's already calculating her exit. Jasmine finally turns her gaze toward Ivanka's image on the studio monitor. It's not a glare. It's not a glare. It's not even anger. It's the look of someone who knows they have more pieces to play and knows exactly when to move them. Mark tries to keep the tone civil. Let's keep this conversation broad for now. General standards, reforms. But it's clear neither woman is here for small talk. The set feels like a boxing ring in the opening round, both circling, waiting for the opening to land the decisive hit. Then it happens. Mark catches a subtle tap of Jasmine's finger against the folder. He gestures toward it. A Congresswoman, can you walk us through exactly what you brought? Jasmine doesn't rush. She opens the folder fully and slides a single page across the desk toward the host. This, she says, is a licensing renewal. The problem isn't the contract itself. The problem is the timing. This agreement was finalized while that same foreign government was negotiating tariffs with the administration Miss Trump was part of. Mark studies the page. He doesn't say anything right away, but his eyebrows twitch. Enough for viewers to notice. Ivanka straightens in her chair, her tone sharpening. This is ridiculous. And frankly, Mark, I'm not going to sit here and let my family be smeared without the facts. Jasmine's voice is level, almost surgical. Then let's go through the facts, one by one. That line hangs in the air like a loaded weapon. From somewhere in the control room, a producer mutters into a headset. Don't cut away, not for anything. Because even though Ivanka still looks composed, everyone in the room can feel it. The ground beneath her is starting to shift. And Jasmine, she's just getting started. Mark shifts in his seat, the kind of subtle movement that tells you he's preparing for turbulence. All right, he says, let's keep this constructive. Miss Trump, you were saying? Ivanka steadies herself, clasping her hands in front of her. What we're seeing here is a perfect example of how public service gets twisted into spectacle. My record, my work, my brand, they've been scrutinized for years, and every time it's been shown I've acted within the law. Her delivery is smooth, her cadence measured, but Jasmine is watching her the way a chess master studies the board, reading not just the moves, but the pauses between them. Mark turns to Jasmine. Your response? Jasmine leans forward, forearms resting on the table. I'm glad Miss Trump says everything she's done has been legal. But legality and ethics aren't the same thing. The question isn't whether she broke the law. The question is whether we're okay with people in or adjacent to positions of power profiting from relationships that could influence U.S. policy. It's precise, it's deliberate, and it lands. Ivanka gives a faint laugh, not one of amusement, but of dismissal. With all due respect, you're assuming facts not in evidence. You're drawing lines between things that aren't connected. Jasmine doesn't blink. Or then help me understand how a company with your name secured a multi-million-dollar renewal from a foreign government, while that same government was negotiating trade rules with the administration you served in. Mark glances toward his second panelist, Gerald Knox, a former Senate staffer, who starts to speak. Mark, if I may, but Ivanka cuts him off. Gerald, I'll happily explain my business dealings in a setting that isn't designed for political ambush. Jasmine's lips twitch into the slightest smile. Smile. It's not an ambush if it's public record. In the control room, a hand signal is given. Stay on Jasmine. Tight shot. Mark sees it in the corner of his eye and follows along. And follows along. Congresswoman, he says, are you saying Miss Trump's business benefited directly from her political ties? I'm saying there's enough here for any reasonable person to ask that question, Jasmine replies. And I think viewers are smart enough to see the pattern for themselves. The room is heavy now. No one's breathing too loudly. Because this is no longer just an interview. Ivanka leans forward in her chair, the camera catching that subtle flicker of irritation she's been trying to hide. Mark, she says, I agreed to this interview to talk about solutions, job growth, women in business, not to be accused of impropriety based on innuendo. Jasmine doesn't flinch. She slides another page from her folder, holding it just high enough for the cameras to catch. Then you won't mind addressing this. She glances at it only briefly before reading. Page 14 of the renewal agreement states that your brand will provide exclusive product lines for this foreign market in exchange for tariff adjustments. Her gaze lifts, locking onto Ivanka's face. It's not innuendo. That's in writing. In writing. Gerald Knox leans toward the monitor displaying Ivanka's feed. His tone is almost cautious. It's a very specific clause. Is that accurate? Ivanka's smile is thin now, more porcelain than warmth. Gerald, business contracts are complex. They're complex. People take a line out of context and twist it to fit a narrative. Mark jumps in. So you're not denying the clause exists? Silence. Not long, just enough for every viewer at home to register it. Jasmine uses the pause like a scalpel. I'm not here to score points. No, here to score points. I'm here because every time politicians or their families blur these lines, regular Americans pay the price. She turns slightly toward the camera, her voice sharpening. Oh, do you know how many small businesses have been waiting months for fair access to these same markets without having your kind of influence? Ivanka shakes her head, frustration creeping into her tone. You're making it sound like my work is to blame for systemic issues. That's not only unfair, it's misleading. Gerald sits back, letting the tension stretch. Even Mark doesn't interrupt. He knows the value of silence when it's heavy enough to press into the audience's chest. Finally, Mark speaks. A Congresswoman, you said you obtained these documents this morning. Bah, how did that happen? Jasmine glances at him, then straight back into the lens. A whistleblower. Someone who's seen how these deals are structured and decided the public should see them too. In the control room, someone mutters over comms. We're live history right now. Don't cut. And if Ivanka thought the first document was bad, she's about to realize Jasmine hasn't even shown her strongest card yet. The control room's chatter is a low hum in Mark's earpiece, but on set the air is razor sharp. Ivanka's jaw shifts. A small tell, the kind that slips through when the veneer starts to crack. Mark, she says, her tone clipped. I think this is crossing a line. My family has endured endless attacks, and I'm not going to dignify baseless claims from anonymous sources. Jasmine doesn't even look at her when she responds. She slides the paper across the desk toward Mark. Then we'll let the audience decide if it's baseless. Mark takes it. His eyes scan down the page, and for the first time he visibly reacts, a subtle widening of the eyes before he schools his expression back into neutrality. We're going to need to address this further, he says carefully. But first, let's take a quick break. The camera fades out, but when they return, the tension hasn't cooled. It's hardened. Mark's voice has that deliberate calm anchors use when they know the next segment might define their careers. We're back on Capitol Roundtable Live. Before the break, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett presented documents related to Ivanka Trump's business dealings. Both parties will now have the opportunity to respond fully. The feed cuts to Ivanka. Her posture is perfect, but her tone is tighter. I want to make something clear. I have spent my career working to empower women in business. My company operates globally, and any agreements we have are the result of hard work and strong partnerships, not political favoritism. Her words are smooth, but her eyes dart briefly off camera before snapping back. Jasmine notices. Mark turns to her. A congresswoman, you've made serious implications here. Are you suggesting this specific contract is unethical? Jasmine leans forward, her voice steady. I'm suggesting that when someone with deep political ties benefits from a foreign government in the middle of sensitive trade negotiations, it raises questions. And those questions deserve answers, not sound bites. A murmur ripples through the studio crew. Even Gerald Knox sits forward now, his pen tapping the desk. Ivanka's lips press together before she responds. And I don't care what you call it. I've built my business from the ground up. I have employees worldwide who depend on these contracts. And, are you suggesting they should lose their jobs because of a hypothetical conflict of interest? Jasmine doesn't blink. I'm suggesting the rules should be the same for everyone. Whether you're a single mom running a bakery in Fresno or a former White House advisor with a global brand. And in that instant, the audience knows. This isn't winding down, it's winding up. Mark exhales slowly, almost like he's bracing for turbulence. All right, he says, a congresswoman, you've hinted there's more here. What exactly do you mean by that? Jasmine doesn't rush. She reaches for the folder again, flipping past several pages before stopping at one marked with a red tab. She lays it flat on the table, taps the corner, and angles it toward the camera. This, she says, is an internal memo from one of the foreign partners listed in the contract. Eddie, Tib. Mark tilts his head. And what does it say? Jasmine's tone is measured, but her words land like cold steel. It details a direct request from your company, Miss Trump, for the foreign government to delay implementing new import restrictions until after a U.S. trade delegation visit. The very delegation your father was scheduled to lead at the time. For a moment, the studio feels hollow. No cough, no shuffle of papers, just stillness. Ivanka blinks once, twice. That's absurd. My father's role in government had nothing to do with my private business. Jasmine leans in. Then explain why your own representative told their counterpart. And I'm quoting here. If we can hold off on the restrictions until after the delegation leaves, we'll be in a stronger position to negotiate favorable terms. Gerald Knox glances at Mark and the exchange is quick but telling. This is bigger than we thought. Ivanka's smile is back, but now it's brittle. Do you honestly think my company operates in a vacuum? We negotiate timelines all the time. That's standard practice. A standard practice. A standard practice. For whom? Jasmine fires back. Because for small businesses without a direct line to the Oval Office, delays like that can cost millions, and they don't have the luxury of timing a government visit to suit their bottom line. Mark looks from one to the other. Ivanka, are you saying the timing was purely coincidental? I'm saying, Ivanka replies, voice sharper now, that you're twisting normal business procedures into some conspiracy theory. Jasmine tilts her head. If it's just normal, then you won't mind releasing the full correspondence for the public to see? Ivanka hesitates, just long enough for the hesitation itself to become the story. The control room catches it, the cameras catch it, and somewhere across the country, political strategists are already drafting tomorrow's talking points. So, Mark barely has time to pivot to the next question when a producer in the control room's voice cuts through his earpiece. Urgent, almost breathless. Mark, we've just confirmed. It's out. The memo's been leaked. Social feeds are already blowing up. He straightens, fighting to keep his tone neutral. Ladies and gentlemen, he says, we're getting reports that the document Congresswoman Crockett referenced is now circulating online. Ivanka's head snaps toward him. What? That's... She stops herself, recalibrates, and forces a steady breath. Jasmine doesn't even flinch. Sex circulating on flinch. Then the American people can judge for themselves. Mark listens again to the control room. The update hits him like a slow wave. Hashtags trending, screenshots being shared, commentators already calling it the memo moment. He knows they've crossed from political debate into a national spectacle. On screen, a live ticker begins crawling under the broadcast. Not planned, but triggered by the Ivanka leans forward, her hands clasped so tightly the knuckles whiten. You know this is politically motivated, she says, eyes locked on Jasmine. You've been trying to make a name for yourself by tearing others down. Jasmine meets her gaze evenly. I don't need to tear anyone down. So tear anyone down. The truth does that on its own. Mark tries to redirect. Let's keep this civil. But the control room interrupts again. Mark, there's more. A second document is starting to trend. It's an email chain. Mark's eyes flicker, but he keeps his voice level. And what's in this chain? See them. And it's in this chain. Jasmine answers before the producers can feed him the details. If it's the one I think, it's correspondence showing direct coordination between Ms. Trump's office and a State Department staffer during those same negotiations. Negotiations. Ivanka's mouth opens, but no words come for a beat too long. That pause is worth 1,000 headlines. Gerald Knox, silent until now, leans in with a tone that's half observation, half warning. Once something like this is in the public sphere, it's not going away. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Ivanka exhales through her nose, slow and deliberate. Then maybe the public needs to hear the full story, not whatever edited version you're feeding them. Jasmine sits back, unshaken. Then tell it. Right here, right now, the audience can feel it. The turning point. The next words could either diffuse the storm or set it ablaze. Ivanka leans forward, locking her eyes on the camera instead of Jasmine. A deliberate pivot. Here's what the public won't hear from the Congresswoman, she begins, voice smooth but sharpened, like glass. These so-called documents are cherry-picked, stripped of context and timed for maximum political damage. You're being manipulated. Mark raises a brow. Are you saying the memo and the emails are fake? No, Ivanka says quickly. I'm saying they're incomplete. They don't show the years of negotiations, the complexity of international trade, or the bipartisan support for projects like this. They show a sliver, and that sliver is being weaponized. Jasmine doesn't move, but the faintest hint of a smile plays at the corner of her lips. One sliver is all it takes when it's sharp enough to cut through the spin. Ivanka ignores her, addressing viewers directly. Ask yourself, why now? Why during a heated election season showing? Why is this the first time you're hearing about these so-called concerns, even though Congresswoman Crockett claims to have had them for months? Gerald Knox, sensing blood in the water, jumps in. That's a fair question. Congresswoman, why now? Jasmine's reply is immediate. Because the final piece of evidence only came to light last week. And when you have proof of a conflict of interest at the highest levels, you don't sit on it, you act. Ivanka tilts her head, her expression shifting from outrage to controlled disdain. Or you wait for the moment when it serves you best politically. Mark tries to step in, but Ivanka's found her rhythm now, and she's pushing it. Let's be honest, she says, this isn't about ethics, it's about power. Power. You want to frame me as corrupt because you can't compete with my record, my results, or my reach. Jasmine finally leans forward, folding her hands on the desk. So no, Ms. Trump. Submit? I want to hold you accountable because too many people in this country have been crushed under the weight of deals made in back rooms they'll never see. And when I see the same last name behind both the deal and the diplomatic visit that made it possible, I don't call that a coincidence. I call that a problem. The studio's silence isn't calm, it's charged. Somewhere in the background, the control room notes a spike in viewership. Millions are now watching live, sensing that something irreversible is about to happen. Mark's next question barely leaves his lips before the control room interrupts again, this time with a tone that makes his stomach drop. Mark, it's happening. The full archive just hit the web. Unredacted. Thousands of pages. He swallows hard, glances at the camera, then back to the panel. Then back to the panel. We're now getting confirmation that the complete set of documents tied to this controversy has been released publicly. Not excerpts, not summaries, the entire file. The air changes instantly. This isn't politics as usual anymore. It's the moment when speculation becomes proof, or exposure, or disaster. Ivanka's eyes flicker, a tiny involuntary tell, before she quickly smooths her expression. And who exactly is verifying that this so-called archive hasn't been tampered with? She asks, voice clipped. Mark doesn't get the chance to answer. Jasmine's phone vibrates on the desk, lighting up with a notification that the network's legal team would later describe as the screen grab heard around the world. She picks it up, glances at it once, and sets it down face up for the cameras. The audience, and everyone watching at home, can see the top email in the thread. It's time-stamped, addressed to Ivanka directly, and carries a subject line that might as well have been written in bold red. Final approval for foreign payment schedule. Ivanka blinks. That's not... It's your name. Jasmine cuts in, her voice low but unmistakably steady. And your signature. Dated the same week you stood at that podium in the East Room, telling the American people there was no personal stake in the project. Mark shifts in his chair, knowing they've crossed into uncharted territory. Miss Trump, would you like to respond to that directly? For a long, unbearable moment, Ivanka says nothing. Her gaze drifts to the audience, then to the camera, then finally back to Jasmine. This is exactly why political theater is so corrosive. She says it last, but her tone has lost its earlier sharpness. Facts without context are weapons in the wrong hands, and I will not... She's cut off. Not by Jasmine, not by Mark, but by the network's breaking news sting. A second anchor appears in a split screen, announcing that federal oversight committees have already issued a formal inquiry based on the leak. The panel freezes. On millions of screens, viewers realize they are watching not just a debate, but the very first frame of a scandal in real time.